Okay guys, welcome to this live stream. Just driving back home from somewhere, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about a topic which is very important, and I think it's a topic that's not covered as much, and there's many non-Muslims who, when it comes to Islam, they get confused regarding this topic, and this topic is to do with worship. And what I specifically want to touch upon today is, what is worship? What's the link between Islam and worship? How is worship to be understood when it comes to Islam? You know, when it comes to being a Muslim. And also, when we touch upon worship, normally the word worship brings to mind certain ideas, certain conceptions, certain notions. Then what I want to touch upon today is what is worship in Islam? What do we understand by it? And I want to touch upon this from two perspectives. The first perspective today I want to touch upon it from is that worship is something that truly frees you. And the second perspective is I want to touch upon the understanding that worship in Islam is something very comprehensive, unlike you may imagine. So many people may think, for example, worship means to just pray 5 times a day, or worship means to fast in Ramadan, or worship means to go to Hajj once in a lifetime. No, it's not only this. It's much more comprehensive than this. So I want to touch upon these things today. So whoever's watching this right now, I really recommend you guys, if you would share this live stream. If you're Muslim and you're watching this, Assalamu alaikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you guys. And please share this live stream on your pages, on your channels, on your Facebook streams, on your personal profiles, just so other non-Muslims can benefit too. And if you're a non-Muslim and you're joining us today, I welcome you guys onto this live stream. I hope you find this beneficial. I hope you find something of benefit here, and I really pray to God that He guides you and us all to the straight path. Now let's begin the topic off. The first thing I want to touch upon is this idea of worship. How does worship tie in with Islam? What does worship mean? Now, as a non-Muslim, you may be looking into Islam, and you may be trying to figure out, why do Muslims keep talking about worshipping in Islam? Worshipping who? Okay, it's worshipping God. What does that mean? X, Y, and Z. So, in a nutshell, put simply, in Islam, we believe that God, the creator of everything, the creator of the heavens and the earth, has been sending messengers throughout history, and He's been sending messengers with the same fundamental message, which is to call people back to the worship of the one true God. And they have done this. Messengers have come and they delivered this message throughout history, and He, for one final time, sent the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, around 1400 years ago, with the final revelation, which is the Quran. Now, it's not a part of the discussion today as to the proofs of the Quran being a miracle from God. Maybe we can do that another time. But if you read the Quran as a text, and when you approach the Quran and you study it, what you come to know and what you discover is that the fundamental message of the Quran, everything in the Quran ties around the core theme, which is worship. And the core message, which is that God is reminding humanity that He created us for no other reason except to worship Him. Right? This is the purpose of life. This is why we were created. Now, it's very interesting, because if we think about it as human beings, we always have asked the question about purpose. Every single one of us at some point in our lives has asked the question about purpose. Who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? Whether you're spiritually inclined, whether you're not, whoever you are, every single human being asks this question at some point. And the interesting thing is, as human beings, we can't come up with the answer to this question. We can make purpose up for ourselves, but that's not our ultimate purpose. Our true purpose can only come from the one that made us, the one that created us. And therefore, we would expect as human beings that if God was to send revelation to humanity, that first and foremost, He would tell us about what our purpose is. Why are we here? And that's what we find in the Quran. God very clearly outlines the purpose of human beings, your and my purpose of existence. God very clearly outlines this purpose in the Quran, and He tells us, for example, in one of the verses of the Quran, He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, which basically means, in English, what it means that God, He did not create the human beings and the other creation, but in particular the human beings, because we're talking about ourselves right now, God says very clearly that He did not create us for no other reason except that we were to worship Him. God outlines this for us very clearly in the Quran, that He created us for no other purpose, no other reason except to worship Him. This is our purpose. This is why we were created, right? This is the reason we're here on this earth. And if you think about life, it's very interesting. We're born and we die. And we have maybe 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, if 70 or 80 years if we're fortunate. But we're here for a limited period of time. And if we're here for a limited period of time, then we're here for a reason. Because if there's no reason behind it, then why not be alive forever, right? Why not just exist forever? But that's not the case. We have a very limited period of time on this earth, and we're here to fulfill a very specific purpose. And as we mentioned, God highlights this for us, and He makes very clear in the Quran that He created us to worship Him. Now, when it comes to worship, even when I'm saying this word, if you're a non-Muslim, you're watching this right now, and you're hearing me say the word worship, you hear me say the word submission to God. For example, a Muslim is somebody who submits to God. A Muslim is somebody who, submits their will to God. Now, when you hear me say these things, some very negative thoughts may come to mind, right? So, for example, when we hear the word worship, submission, slavery, all of these words in the English language generally bring to mind a very negative notion, a very negative meaning. When we think of worship and slavery, we don't think of positive things. We think of things which are cruel and evil and bad, right? So naturally, when you hear that our purpose is to worship God, or God created us to worship Him, almost immediately, and I won't blame you for this, just because of history and the way we understand things, you will think it's something negative. A negative picture may build in your mind. You may think, oh, that's evil, that's bad, that's not nice. God wants me to be a slave. God wants me to worship Him. God wants me to be in submission to Him. And we may get the wrong end of the stick with these things. So it's important to clarify what worship means in Islam. And this is what I want to really touch upon. And how I want to do this is I want to touch upon this from two distinct perspectives today. The first thing I want to touch, first aspect I want to touch upon worship from in Islam is the idea that worshipping in Islam, submitting yourself to your Creator in Islam, worshipping God is something that truly frees you, right? It's something that truly liberates you. Now you may be thinking, hold on a second, isn't that contradiction? On one hand you're saying submit to God, worship God, be a slave of God, and on the other hand you're saying that it frees you and it liberates you, and it sets you free. How does that work? Now here's what I mean. For us to really understand what I mean, first we need to put things into perspective. Now the first thing we need to understand, guys, is that God did not create us to worship anything else. Now the human being, if we really think about the human state, every single human being is in a state of submission and slavery anyway, right? Now you may think you're free, you may think you're liberated, you may think you live in the 21st century and you could choose to be a free person and do whatever you want, right? We have these ideas, these notions are sold to us. People tell us, be free, live the way you want to live, do what you want to do, X, Y, and Z, right? And we start to formulate these beliefs in our minds that we're free in some way. But the reality is, guys, that none of us are free. Every single human being is a slave. Every single human being is in submission. Every single human being is submitting to one thing or the other. Now, again, you may think I'm making a bold claim here, but let me put things into perspective. Take the most extreme example. Take the type of person who says, I don't follow anyone, I don't submit to anyone, I don't conform to any way of life or any system, I do what I want to do. This is the most extreme end of the spectrum. You'll find somebody who you think is truly liberated, they're truly free because they don't follow anything or anyone, they don't follow any book, any system, X, Y, and Z, right? They do what they want to do. But what they don't realize is when they do what they want to do, when they say this, when they act upon this, what they're doing, in other words, is they're submitting to themselves. They're worshipping themselves. They are following their own desires, their own whims. They are doing what their own selves tell them to do. So, in other words, they're a slave to themselves, right? And if we really think things through and you really sit down and think about this for a moment, what you'll realize is that no one is free. every single human being in existence is a slave. Every single human being is a slave of one thing or the other. Some people are a slave to money, other people are a slave to systems, other people are a slave to ideologies, other people are a slave to other people. You know, some are slaves of themselves. They are slaves to their own desires. They're slaves to their own nafs, their own internal selves. So no one is free, right? Every single human being, as soon as they are born, they fall into slavery or submission. And we know it's our nature, because God tells us very clearly in the Quran that He created us to worship. So if we don't find our Creator and we don't submit to Him and worship Him, we will end up worshipping something or the other. We will end up worshipping, filling that hole, that void inside of ourselves with one thing or the other. Some of us would submit to money. Some of us would submit to materialism. Some of us would submit to some other ideology, right? Maybe a relationship, X, Y, and Z. So if we really think about it, every single human being is a slave. Now what Islam does is something very profound. What God does in the Quran, He gives us a choice, right? He gives us a very clear choice. He says, look, I made you an intelligent human being. I made you a rational human being. I made you a human being that can think and can decide and has got free will to choose. And then God presents us with a choice. And if we rationally think about the choice God is presenting us with, the most rational and dignifying option we can take is submission to God. Because God is saying this, He's reminding us, look, everyone is a slave. You can't escape slavery. But what you have to do is you have to choose your submission and slavery. Are you going to be a slave to created things? Are you going to be a slave to material things? Are you going to be a slave to things in this world? Or are you going to be a slave of the Creator, the one that created everything? Now, the rational person, when he reflects upon these options, should come to the conclusion that, look, it only makes sense. It only makes sense to submit yourself to and be a slave of the Creator of everything that exists, instead of being a slave to things that are created. Why be a slave to things that are created? Because things that are created have no power. They're dependent themselves. You know, what does that say about you as a rational human being if you're going to submit to created things? If you're going to be submitting to things which are already in submission? Right? Doesn't it make sense? Isn't it more dignifying to submit yourself to the Creator of everything that exists? And here's what's very powerful. As soon as you wake up to the reality of your existence and your purpose in life, and you submit yourself to your Creator, as soon as you do this, something very special happens. You are freed from the slavery of created things. You are no longer a slave to systems or ideologies or materialism or worldly things. You're free from these things. You're not a slave to yourself anymore. You are no longer a slave to yourself, because now no longer are you submitting to your own desires. No longer are you following your own desires or doing what you want to do. Now you are conforming yourself to the will of God. You are doing what God has asked you to do, the ultimate authority. And as soon as you do this, you're truly free. You are truly liberated. This is what you would call true liberation and freedom. You know, so those people, you know, and I'm speaking to our non-Muslim guests and friends now that are listening to this. You know, if you are enticed by the idea of being liberated and being free and being a free person, if you are inclined to these views, as we should all be, but the only way, and then you should realize the only way to achieve that freedom and liberation from a worldly perspective is to submit yourself to your Creator. And when you submit yourself to your Creator, you will find true liberation and freedom from this worldly perspective. And that's the first point I wanted to touch upon, that when you submit yourself to your Creator, you find true liberation and freedom from a worldly perspective. The second thing I want to touch upon, when it comes to worship in Islam, worship isn't just praying 5 times a day or fasting in the month of Ramadan or, you know, going to Hajj once in your lifetime, you know, or just doing the 5 pillars of Islam or these ritualistic acts. Yes, they're a part of worship. They come under worship, but they are not the only forms of worship. Now, if we go back to what God says in the Quran, He says that He created human beings for no other reason except to worship Him. That means that our entire lives have the potential to be lives full of worship, lives just acting out worship. Now, how can we achieve this? How does this make sense if we just pray 5 times a day, for example? Because it only takes about 10 minutes each time. Say about half an hour a day goes towards your prayer. The rest of the day, you're not praying, right? So how do we make sense of this now that our entire lives should be worship? And I think what we need to clarify here is that worship in Islam is something holistic. It's not just doing certain actions or activities and that's it. No, worship in Islam is very, very holistic. So when we say worship in Islam, this could be as broad as waking up in the morning, getting out of bed, going down, brushing your teeth, having your breakfast, all of these things that I've just mentioned, all of these actions that I've just mentioned, all of these can be a form of worship, right? Because what we need to appreciate here, guys, is that worship in Islam is not limited to, for example, just the ritualistic acts. Brushing your teeth in the morning. Say you're brushing your teeth with the intention that you wanna, brush your teeth so your teeth are healthy, so your breath will smell good. So when you speak to people, they are not offended by bad breath. And you just this could be a form of worship. You having breakfast in the morning, you can have the intention that you want to have breakfast so you energize your body and you go out into the world and you do good things, right? And you help humanity and you take care of people. This can also be a form of worship, right? It's all about intention. You can make every single aspect of your life a form of worship. You can, for example, if you go on a diet next time and you're a Muslim and you say, I want to go on a diet because I want to be more healthy, I want to be more strong, so I have a more productive life and I can do other acts of worship more productively, carry them out more productively, that's a form of worship. Everything in your life can become worship in Islam. And you worshipping God is, something that's going to bring immense reward. Because then this is the next thing I want us to really understand. That when we talk about worship in Islam and worshipping God and fulfilling our purpose, there is benefit in this for you too, right? So before I get to the benefit, let me quickly touch upon some of you that may be watching and may be thinking, okay, I understand, okay, worship is the purpose of my life, but how do I worship God? I've outlined a few things for you already, which is all aspects of your life could be a form of worship based on the intentions that you have. But also some practical things like doing your 5 daily prayers are a form of worship. Just sitting there, for example, say you go out into the wilderness or into the countryside and you just reflect. Just sitting there and reflecting over nature, using your ability to reason and pondering over creation, looking at the stars, looking at the night sky, looking at the sun and the moon, and just reflecting upon these things because you understand and you appreciate these are all signs of the Creator. This is a form of worship. Reading the Quran, reading Revelation is a form of worship. Doing good deeds, helping others, living selfless lives, being there for others is a beautiful and amazing form of worship, right? So all of these aspects, all of these things can be a form of worship. And when you engage in these actions with the right intention, it's all a form of worship. So in other words, you can look at worship like this. Your whole life, every moment of your existence, every single moment of your existence, if done right, if done with the right intention, believing in your Creator, if done with the right intention, every single moment of your life could be a potential moment of reward. A potential moment of reward because you're fulfilling your purpose, right? And each time when we worship our Creator, when you submit to Him, when you turn to Him, this will bring good things into your life as well. First and foremost, when you fulfill your purpose, you're going to find peace and tranquility anyway. Because when any particular thing, whatever it is, whether it's a car, whether it's a washing machine, whether it's a television, whether it's a computer, a laptop, whatever it is, whenever a thing fulfills its purpose and it does what it's designed to do, it will thrive. It will thrive. So for example, a car that's designed to run on petrol, if you put petrol into the tank, it will serve you well. It will keep running. But if you put water into the tank, it's going to break down, right? Same thing applies to us. If we understand what our purpose is and we align ourselves with our purpose and we start to fulfill our purpose, we will find peace and tranquility in our lives. We will find relief in our lives. This will protect us from so many different types of anxiety and depression and frustrations and stress, right? A lot of anxiety and depression these days, a lot of anxiety and depression is an existential type of depression and anxiety, meaning it's a type of anxiety and depression which stem from questions about existence. Who am I? Why am I here? What's going to happen to me after death? I'm going to die. How do I deal with these things? And a lot of these questions that the human beings think about, they lead to a lot of anxiety and frustration and depression until we find the answers to these questions. Because human beings have been created inquisitive. God has placed the nature of questioning, and especially questioning the purpose of our lives, within us to aid us and direct us to fulfilling our purpose. If you can see these questions that we have, you can see these questions as we have as almost like alarm bells that go off inside the human being. As soon as you turn away from your Creator, things don't feel right. You feel anxious, you feel stressed, you feel frustrated. You feel something deep inside that something is not right. Something doesn't make sense. There has to be more to life than this. And these are signs for us, so that we look for our Creator. We search for Him and we find Him and we submit to Him again. So when you worship your Creator, you'll find peace. You'll find tranquility. You'll find relief from many forms of depression and anxiety. Number 2, you will find eternal paradise, right? Because we have to remember, another question that we ask as human beings, what happens to me after I die? The answer is that we do go on. There is eternal paradise. Now, paradise is an amazing place. Paradise is a place that we actually dream of in this life. Paradise is a place where, there are rivers flowing beneath gardens. There are beautiful, beautiful green gardens, lush green gardens, beautiful houses, beautiful sceneries and views. Paradise is a place where there is no more trials, there's no more tribulations, there's no more difficulty. Paradise is a place where, you will have no more nasty feelings, bad feelings towards others, towards yourself. There will be no more stress, there will be no more anxiety, there will be no more troubles of this life. You wouldn't have to toil, and you wouldn't have to work anymore to earn a living. You wouldn't have to go through the difficult times in life. There will be no more death. Paradise is a place where there's no more death. You live, there's no more illnesses, there's no more diseases, there's no more difficulties in any way, shape or form. Paradise is what we human beings aspire for. And unfortunately, because we want it deep down inside, there's a part of our nature that wants it and that yearns for this place. We try to find paradise in this world. But we'll never find paradise in this world because it's not meant to be here. This is a testing ground. Here we are here to be tested. We are here to find our Creator and live good lives, so we end up in that paradise. We end up in that beautiful place that we're aspiring to be in, right? So if you worship God, you worship your Creator, you fulfill the purpose of your life, there is the greatest of rewards, which is paradise. And there's a reward greater than this as well, which is to meet your Creator, to meet the one that made you, the one we cannot even imagine, the one we cannot even think about, the one we cannot ever comprehend in this life, the one we can never see in this life. You will get to see your Creator. You will get to be close to your Creator, and that is the ultimate, the greatest reward, right? And then on top of this, you have many other things. When you worship your Creator, it will develop humility. It will develop a beautiful characteristic, because the closer you come to God, the more godly you will be. The more you will change your characteristics as well. The more pious you will become, or that we will aspire to become. So there are so many amazing rewards and benefits of just worshiping your Creator. And what's amazing is, look at what God's done. And I'll summarize like this for us today, is that God has not only created us, but He has not only given us our purpose, now He's outlined our purpose for us through revelation. And then on top of this, He's given us all the tools that we need to find Him and to worship Him. And He's made it so easy for us. He's made it so easy for us. All we have to do is recognize our Creator, be grateful to Him, which is, in other words, worship Him, thank Him, and for just worshipping Him and turning to Him and doing some very, very simple things, living good lives, living lives which are selfless, living lives which have meaning and have value. Living this life, for just doing this, God gives us such an amazing reward, which is eternal paradise. And I personally can't think of any reason why any human being would, once they understand this reality, would not want to submit to their Creator. I just can't see any reason for that, because God has made it so easy for us. And and the beautiful thing is, and the interesting thing is, that us fulfilling our purpose, God's not going to gain anything from this. God is free of need, right? God is free of need. He's free of need. He's independent. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. If every single human being on the face of this earth stopped worshipping God, it doesn't take anything away from God. And if every single creature on the face of this earth human being was to worship God perfectly, it would not increase God in His majesty in any way, shape or form. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if you worship God, you fulfill your purpose, God's not benefiting, you will benefit, I will benefit, we will benefit in this life and the next life. And this highlights to us the mercy of our Creator, who loves us, who wants best for us. And for our guidance, He continuously sent revelation, continuously sent messengers. He sent the final messenger, He sent the final revelation. He preserved the final revelation for us till the Day of Judgment. It's unchanged. The Quran is the literal words of God, preserved till this very day, and it will continue to remain preserved, because God Himself says in the Quran that He has revealed it and He will preserve this book. And He's made it so easy for us. All He's telling us to do is turn back to us, to turn back to Him and fulfill the purpose of our existence. And if we do this, we will prosper here and we will prosper in the next life. I mean, what more could we ask for if we really think about it? So hopefully I've given you guys something to think about, something to reflect over, and if you're a non-Muslim that's looking and has been searching and you feel you're ready to become Muslim, please leave it in the comment section below. And I'm going to go through the comments after this video. If I see you guys comment, I'll definitely address you and I'll answer back to you, and we can help you become Muslim as well and take those first steps to turning back to your Creator and worshipping Him and developing that relationship with Him, where you'll be successful here and in the next life. If you have any other questions, please leave in the comments below. I will try to do this more regularly. I know it's been a while, but we do intend on doing this far more regularly so people can benefit, something you guys can share. Like I said, if you're Muslim and you've been watching this, please share this video. Please share this on your Facebook pages with your non-Muslim friends. Share the link. This is your opportunity to give da'wah, to gain some reward. If you're a non-Muslim that's been with us today, hopefully this has been beneficial. I thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum.